I think we had as many as 9 employees in CDBG home at one time, and we reduced the staffing down to about 4, and the previous director was concerned about the funding, and that was one of her motivations to say, I'm going to take something else. And then we went for a year or so with an interim, and then we found Laura McCool Johnson, and things have changed since she joined us. Again, creative, innovative relationships, understanding that we've never had before.
Great.
And we're lucky to have her, and we'd love to come back and
I think that'd be a great exercise to
share.
go through. Councilor Barnes.
Yeah, and you have, Laura, I was just dovetailing. City manager's taking a lot of what I was getting ready to say. But Isaiah, when Joe and all were here, it was at the director level before, wasn't it? I remember we did gut this program, because I remember it was, I forget her name, who was a director, then Joe and a number of other individuals. But yeah, there were about that many people prior. Am I wrong or am I right?
You're absolutely right, Counselor.
And it was at the director level. I mean, we gutted things.
We did.
We gutted this program.
We did, and what we are hearing today, that she went back and pulled records, obviously, and you heard her mention today money from 2011. She just,
We lucked up.
Yes, she's been phenomenal with it. And again, when you've got the relationships and you can go to Atlanta or make the phone call and they're telling you, yes, that's, I mean, it just makes a difference. So, yeah, I just don't know how to word it any.
No, well, this is.
And I don't want to use that as being critical of those who came before her, but she just brings a different level of understanding and relationship.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Barnes. Councilor Davis.
Well, Mr. City Manager, that does concern me somewhat, and I know it does you, but that's okay. I mean, I personally have always thought that you could only use it for certain items. We've always talked about that, and I know we're using the word public services now, and I'm not sure what all that entails, but I'm glad that there's a better understanding of what exactly this funding can and how it can be used, which is good. So I think it's probably new for all of us, if I may. So with that being said, Ms. Johnson, if you would just provide us real soon with a list of all the line items where the funding will be used for.
Okay.
And that's kind of customary, what we always ask for, and I believe those decisions have already been made and they're within the budget, so.
Yeah, we're currently under our consolidated plan preparation and our action plan preparation for HUD. Those plans have been on display since April 1st, so we had to have all the information in the plan to put on public display on April 1st. We did have our public hearing on the 28th to go over our action plan and to receive any additional comments that we may have gotten from the public. We did have a few comments, and those have been put into the plan by our consultants. That action plan and consolidated plan will come before council on May the 10th for final approval. But we will give you a copy of the line item budget, as you know. That's in the action plan.
Is this action plan something new that we're doing now?
No, it's brought before council every year around this time.
Okay.
Yeah, HUD requires that we have this plan submitted to them by May 15th of every year.
Okay. If you can just get that list to us, preferably before the meeting.
Okay.
Thanks, sir. Councilor Hutt.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I was privileged to attend all 3 of her community meetings, and they were well attended, and she provided so much information. I had to come back each night just to ask more questions. Some things apply to specific areas, but in general, it applied to everyone that attended the meeting. So I just wanted to publicly say thank you, and piggyback with the city manager to say how lucky we are to have you. As they all know, my learning curve continues on and on and on. I wake up every day trying to learn something new. And I was just amazed at what you can do with a little bit of money. You know, you're taking monies and saying, okay, I can only use a certain percentage, but this is what we have accomplished. So thank you, and I will continue to ask questions and learn a little bit more. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm
Thanks,
here
Sarah.
for whatever questions anybody has.
All right, thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is John Hutchison with Inspection and Codes, and he'll go through the fee increases that are proposed and recommended in this budget.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to run through these pretty quick. Kind of during the interim period and now into the full period, there's been a couple of questions about fees that come in that I get from contractors and developers and architects and everyone else. So I kind of took this as a time to address some of these issues where we got them. Like I said, the three main ones we want to look at is a residential demolition fee increase, a revision to the plumbing fee, and a permit reactivation fee. Suggesting we'd like to move up the demolition fee for residential lots from $45 a lot to be $50 a lot. As you can see, we called other municipalities. You see Auburn, Albany, Augusta. We talked to Macon, Bibb County, Savannah. We called other cities to kind of see what their demolition costs were. So just bumping ours up, is currently at $45 to bump it up to $50. We didn't want to push it out too far because we still want to incentivize homeowners themselves to be able to come in and take care of their own properties if they see fit to demolish them.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
would you, as you go through these, tell us what these are used for? I mean, in order to charge the $50, the demolition fee is charged to when do you charge the demolition fee?
Oh, when the owner comes in and they want to take care of the property, they want to tear it all down. So that's when they incur that fee. They come in, they tell us what they're tearing down, the location, proof of ownership, and then we proceed to allow them to tear the building down. We come out to inspect to make sure they're not leaving debris, they're not leaving material all in the road as they're tearing the property down, erosion control measures and things like that.
Okay, so the owner, property owner pays that fee
Yes,
when
ma'am.
they demolish?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Permitting fee.
Correct.
permit fee.
That's
Okay,
correct.
great. And if you'd sort of give us that with each one of these, just
That'd be fine.
when is it used and how, who pays it, that sort of thing?
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am. All right. The next one is the plumbing fee revision. I'm going to probably get a lot of flack from some plumbers. Typically, when we do, when the trades, you have your building permit, but then you have your electrical permit, you have your mechanical permit, you have your gas permit, and as those subcontractors come in, they have to pull permits. Now, I wanted to clarify this because the way it is in the system, it's a bit of a gray area. The way the permit is written up now is per system. So if it's a residential situation, say residential plumber's coming in to do some work on your house, he only pays $50, and there's no issue there. The issue comes into multifamily apartment complexes and things like that. So say if an apartment complex comes in, I'm going to skip ahead real quick and I'll go back. See, if you got an apartment complex here, you have 4 different units in that apartment complex, for example. The plumber only pays $50 for that whole building. But my electrical guy, he has to come in, he pays $200 because that's 50 times each unit. My mechanical guy coming in to put your HVAC system in, he's $50 per unit. I have my gas guy, if you have a hot water heater, all that kind of stuff, he has to pay $50 per unit, but the plumber only pays $50 for the whole building. So it's just to even that out. We've gotten complaints from the electrical subcontractors for them to complain about why are they getting away with that, or why do they pay less. Long story, with the building the way it is, if you do a system that way, you have all your clean outs and chases. Technically, it is all a part of one system. But my inspectors still have to come in for the rough ends. They have to check the toilets. They've got to come in and check the shower heads. They've got to check all of those plumbing fixtures, even though they're only $50 is all we're getting as a permit fee. So it's just to balance the field with all the trades that they all pay $50. It'll be per meter because we'll go back real quick. Back in 2012, the Georgia Water Stewardship Act went into effect, which means all new buildings and new apartment complexes that are built have to be sub-metered. So therefore, that $50 per meter would apply to each unit. All right, and then my last one, it's the, we want to call it the, the permit reactivation fee. During construction, typically permits expire 180 days after no activity. What happens is the contractor, for whatever reason, stops working on a project. Either it's funding from the bank loan, however it was, doesn't come through. So after 6 months of inactivity, we typically void the permit. When we void the permit, the trick now is that technically we could double fee the owner coming back in after that 6 months. We could say, hey, you have to pay that full permit fee. Take, for example, if the house valuation which the owner gives to us is $180,000, that's $856 that owner would have to pay again after that permit expired. So we either choose to double fee them, which we choose not to do. So what we've kind of done in the department is we issue an alterations permit. But at the end of the day, the alterations permit is not a good idea because the tax assessor is saying, how are you altering a house that's not even on the tax roll yet? So to try to clarify that, we're going to take that alteration out, and alterations permits will still be available, but you'll just have to reactivate the fee for $75. So we would keep the permit open. We would close it, and then it would be reopened for that fee, but instead of charging that same homeowner or developer $856, like I said, for example, a $180,000 house to come back in, he only pays $75 to reactivate that same permit. So we can keep it open in our system, and we don't have two concurrent permits going against each other.
Excuse me, John. Councilor Davis?
Yes, Director Hutchins, what would be considered inactivity?
Typically we get a few that's just a homeowner. Like I said, they may have started a construction project, and either because they're self-performing the work, say that they couldn't afford the trusses, or they couldn't get the shingles, or whatever specialty material they were doing. If there's no activity in any of the trades, from electrical, plumbing, mechanical, or building, we would void the permit. And so, because there's no work to be done, therefore our guys are going out there every 30 days to check on this property, and there's nothing going on. So our manpower is just being wasted going to a property where there's no work going on. So after 6 months, we void the permit.
I thought they're automatically going out every 30 days? I thought they were called out.
Well, they were called out for certain permits, but if they're inactive, we keep a book. So as everything comes into intergov and it's logged in, if our guys, if it's a slow day like today, if it's raining, a lot of guys, we may not have any slab permits or any footing permits, they'll check some lower projects that it's been a while that there haven't been any work on. So they go by, and it's also logged in the computer to tell them there's no activity being done. So 30 days is generous. Usually it's between 45 and 60 just because we haven't enough active inspections going on. But if they do get a day where they don't have a lot of inspections, they do review old projects. And a lot of those we start expiring because they're projects that were started in 2013 or 2014. And we're just clearing them off the books because there's no work going on.
Am I right, would it seem to affect more, instead of spec type development, it would affect more complex and custom type development?
Not necessarily. Like I said, we get all kinds of issues where people come in, or either the shipment of material didn't make it, or they're changing design, or, like I said, mostly it's just lack of funding. Contractors or small-time contractors, not big, huge ones, but they'll come in and they don't have the funding to finish the project. So either they allow it to expire, and then they'll come back in a year and say, hey, I have the funding to finish this project. So like I said, you know, like you mentioned, like a spec house, if you're saying it's going to cost $180,000, we wanted to do it within the last 2 years. So we don't want somebody coming from 2007 saying, hey, I need to reactivate my permit because codes have changed. So we want to do it within the last 2 years to keep some kind of cap on it to be able to control what's going on. So they would come in and say, hey, you know, we want to reactivate this permit, and we would charge them the $75 to do so.
Is this type of activity happening on a regular basis?
No, sir. Probably throughout the year, we probably get between 20 and 30. So it's not a lot, but it's just something to catch that. So when the tax assessor's looking at the tax rolls at the end of the year, like I said, the big question is when we do alterations to that permit, because that's the only way we can officially reopen it without charging them a full fee, then it gets all messy. So I'm just trying to streamline that process.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to bore you all with my accolades to an exciting staff, an exciting team, but you know, he's a brand-new director. It's not 30 days old, but as you can see, he knows his craft, he's skilled, and I'm excited about what he's going to be able to do for inspections and codes in the city of Columbus. I just needed to take a moment to thank him and congratulate him and point out to you all that we have great staff, a great team.
That's not really a surprise to us, and he survived his first budget session relatively unscathed, so we cut him some slack this time. We are glad you're in the position you're in. We're looking forward to some great things.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, hang on. We've got Councilor Barnes.
No, yeah, you know, I didn't waste no time now. You don't have a short memory. I didn't waste any time for it. See, it doesn't take me long to recognize that potential, just like Laura.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Good afternoon. Do you know approximately how many houses we have that need to be demolished that we don't have on the list yet?
We currently have 103, and we had a demo hearing last Wednesday, and we just added another, 25 of those 27. So that brings you about 130. And like I said, every month, depending on the status of those houses, kind of piggybacking off of what Laura mentioned. Part of my demolition budget this year is also to, we approved the boarding of some of these houses, so necessarily we don't get to the point where we have to just tear them down altogether. There's an opportunity where we're establishing the criteria that we could there'll still be a lien on the property, but we'll be able to board them up and safe them until the point where somebody may want to develop them.
Okay. How long do we hold the lien on a house before we go in and sell it to get our money back?
When we do a demolition, we put a lien on the property.
Okay.
And so at this point, we haven't we've looked at going through a foreclosure process, and at the time that happened, this was several years ago, it was not beneficial. The Land Bank Authority has been reactivated, and it's something that we've kind of put on our project list, is to determine if there's a better process for recouping our funds after we go through a demolition, because we have several million of dollars of demolition liens that obviously if they weren't maintaining their property, paying a demolition lien is probably not a top priority as well. So we are looking at how we can recoup some of our funds and get those properties back on the tax roll.
So you're going to bring us something in the next 6 months?
Yes,
Some kind
ma'am.
of recommendation? Because I feel like it's a lot of properties that we had on the demolition list and nothing has ever happened. After it's torn down, we have a lien that's sitting out there.
And we think maybe the land bank might be a really good option for us to consider. And Councilor Henderson came to a debate or a public meeting, and we talked about a blight tax, which they have in Albany. And so Laura has is looking into that as well. So we are looking at what we can do to recoup some of those funds.
Do you know how long Albany and other communities hold liens before they actually act on them?
That is not something that I know, but we'll definitely provide that back to council with a recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I believe it was Councilor Davis who asked for a list of all of the liens we have on properties throughout the county. And I think we either emailed that or we have it. Tiasha Johnson is saying we didn't email it, but we do have that list. They sent it to me, and we are going to be providing you all with that list. And then we are going to be looking at how we can deal with that list of liens. We've got a
But-
lot of liens on property throughout the county, and
It would be interesting to see what percentage of those liens are recovered, because I would imagine it's very low. And I know on so many occasions, when we have a demolition, the cost of the demolition and the lien amount is higher than the lot is worth. So rather than it sit there, maybe incorporate into your study a recommendation, getting it to one of these philanthropic organizations is somebody that'll get it on the tax rolls and earning taxes again, because we had a situation the other day where a woman wanted to buy a lot, and the lot was, frankly, because of the liens that were on it, it wasn't worth what we had to pay, she had to pay to get it done, so. Mayor Pro Tem, I don't think was finished.
And that's my point. Especially if my house is that house next door to that property that we have a lien on it because they didn't keep it up. And boarding it up is not helping a lot of times. And when you have snakes crawling over your property because the property is unkept, I just think we need to get real busy on them.
Thank you.
Well,
Councilor
yes.
Davis?
Well, Mr. City Manager, I'm glad you brought that up, thank you. Restored my confidence, I thought you forgot about it. I'm just kidding. But, Mr. Budget Chair, I think we do have a vehicle in place to do exactly what you stated, which would be a concern as well. My question, I want to go back to Director Hutchinson, and just on the plumbing fee revision, is it correct for me to be accurate in saying that I don't know if the Georgia Water Steward Act that you're talking about, or the Columbus Water Works, is there now a meter required for all sprinkler systems?
That would be more of an irrigation system.
Irrigation system,
Yeah, they
correct.
have backflows, and we check the backflows, but most of that stuff is installed by private.
They don't have to be metered.
Well, I'm not sure. I know for buildings, I know our stuff does, and people choose to separate the meters. You can separate them, but I don't know in all cases that they do.
Okay. If they would, under this act, or by the waterworks now, and they've gone through, I know the backflow preventers are extremely important, and they're strict to the text on that. But would this equate to, right now, it's per system, which would be $50, but if you do have to add another meter, then you're talking about, for an irrigation system, I'm assuming that would be on how many permits per year?
Irrigation, that'd probably be somewhere between 600 and, depending on if they're new developments, so around probably 500 to 600 permits.
So if that's the case, you'd be looking at 2 fees for 2 meters.
That's correct. So
Per-
like I said, in that case,
Per unit or per house? development?
It's mostly on multifamily housing, because those are the ones that used to just, the older just had the master meter, and you had nothing, everything ran to the master meter, and then they divided it by the tenants, and then that was your bill you paid. So with the Georgia Water Stewardship Act, that was a state law. It's not through IBC or anybody else. That's a state law to sub-meter for multifamily and commercial buildings. So residential, I'd have to get with the waterworks to clarify on the meter layout and backflow with irrigation per se. But I know
Is the city
specifically.
inspectors inspecting the irrigation systems, or is it
No, sir.
waterworks?
No, sir. because that's not a part of the building structure. It's part of the site development, but we wouldn't inspect it.
But we would charge for an extra meter.
Well, that's what I have to clarify with the waterworks to make sure, because it's something we would inspect, so I wouldn't assume for us to charge for a meter is something we don't inspect.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Councilman Baker?
Thank you. And congratulations on the new appointment. This isn't a budget question, so I really won't hold you up, just when you have time and get things under your feet, ready to take a look. I've had a call from a couple of the tradesmen. They've just run into an issue to where if, for example, there happened to be two owners of a piece of property, and one owner called a tradesman out to a repair, and he went and bought his permit, bought his materials, went by and checked on the job, and set it up for the next day. In the meantime, the other owner had called a worker, and he did the same thing. And they both showed up on the same job with a permit and materials and time and cost and all involved. And I don't think those permits can be refunded, or is there a way they could be set up for a credit since one of them was out, a permit fee, material cost, time. Obviously an owner can hire whoever they want. I'm not going to get in the middle of that. But if there's maybe a notification process, if within a very short time frame, two identical permits are bought at the same address for the same job, if there's just perhaps a notification to say, hey, we don't know what's going on, but y'all need to get this straight because we don't want there to be a problem. If you would just give that some thought as you go forward. It sounds like you're going through your processing a little bit, and just see if we could come up with some ideas in the future. Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And one other thing I was going to mention, Deputy City Manager Hodge talked about that public hearing, and we did ask about the blight tax for landlords that are repeatedly fined for the same type of violation, and maybe impacting their ad valorem taxes and trying to capture some money and then funnel that directly back into either the demolition process or some other community reinvestment type activity. But we also were asking, I know we have a lot of maintenance type liens. In other words, if the grass gets overgrown and it's an absentee landlord, maybe they inherited a piece of property, they haven't done anything with it, and they live out of town, and we'll go take care of the property, and then I think we put a lien on that property. I have no idea what the percentage is. It's got to be a very small percentage-wise, but it may be pretty good size from a dollar's perspective if we engaged a collection agency. We did it on parking fines and try to recover some of these revenues from people who do have the ability to pay, and just because they don't live next door to it or live near it, it's out of sight, out of mind.
And we do utilize a collection agency for the weed liens.
Okay.
But we get very little response, even through the collection agency, but we do utilize one.
Okay. John, thanks.
And the last department on the agenda for today is Fire and EMS, so I'll turn it over to Chief Meyer.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, Chief.
I'm used to coming here and telling you that I need several million more dollars because we're about to have to shut down, but that doesn't seem to be the case this year, thank goodness.
And you can stay.
It's still early, I know. I'm trying to go modern and use this iPad here. We'll see if I doubt this works, but we'll try. We were asked to come today to talk about the recommendation for fee increases for the department. It's been several years since we reviewed our fees. The first thing we did was pull up state law, official code of Georgia, annotated Title 25. And 25-212 states that jurisdictions of our size have to adopt the state's minimum fire safety standards. Of course, we have done that in Columbus. It's not something we have to do every year, but it is in our code of ordinances. Title 25 also gives CCG the authority to charge and retain appropriate fees for the services that we provide when we go out and conduct these life safety code inspections. So in front of you is a list of the old fee and the recommended. fee. We contacted the state fire marshal's office, so our recommended fees are pretty much in line with theirs. They do charge more in some instances, and we didn't see the need to do that. Again, it's been almost 10 years since we've increased these fees. These aren't fees that the homeowner would pay. This is more developers or business owners, folks that own or want to start up personal care homes. In the past, and if you look down the list, it may be the 7th or 8th down the list, is what we call a small personal care home, is personal care homes with 6 or less occupants. We haven't been charging anything for that. And we probably had a couple hundred last year. So it's taking us time. And really, when I talk about an inspection, that's 2 times. That's 2 visits. We usually have to go out there 1 time and meet with the owner, recommend to them, inform them on the things that they need to do to meet the minimum standards. The next visit we go out, hopefully everything's taken care of, and we can sign off on that, and they can get their permit from the state. If we can't sign off on that, then there's other visits after that that we're going to have to go out to the property to make sure they meet the minimum standards. We're projecting that with the fee increases that our revenue stream should increase by about 50%. Just looking at what we've done historically, should keep up again this year. We also did look at Cobb County to see what they were charging. What we found out was jurisdictions are doing everything across the board. The way we operate in Columbus, John's group does certain things when it comes to construction, and the fire department takes care of other things, sprinkler systems, fire alarm systems, egress, fire extinguisher placement, vent hood inspections, and we work really well together. So we think these, I will have to say, when I first looked at them, I thought, man, guys, these have really gone up. But looking at what they got from the state and other jurisdictions in Georgia, we're pretty much in line with these new recommended fees.
Any specific questions on any of the fees? Councilor Thomas.
On the, excuse me, the fire report fee that you're going from 3 to 5, is this for insurance purposes you get a report? Is that generally what that is?
Generally it is. Now, if we have a homeowner that's had a fire, we don't charge them. They've experienced enough loss, so if they'll come to us, we just give them that. But if we have maybe somebody that owns rental property, something like that, commercial business, we'll charge them the $5.
Luckily, I have not had to experience getting a police report, so I don't have any idea how much they charge for a police report. Is it about this amount, or?
I'm lucky like you. I have no idea. I haven't had to get a fire report either, so I'm not sure.
And I'll have to check on the fees to make sure. I'm not off the top of my head sure what they charge for a police report.
It just seems to me that those 2 reports are very similar in use and so forth, and I'm willing to bet you they charge at least 5, if not more than that.
And we could look at increasing
And luckily,
that.
I haven't had to have a fire report either.
You did have a good article the other. I read that yesterday. So that was a good article.
Thank you, ma'am. Oh, Chief, any other questions for the chief? Chief, appreciate what y'all do. Sure do. All of y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the agenda for today. The next scheduled budget review session will be next Tuesday, immediately following council meeting. The departments that we currently have scheduled is Parks and Recreation, Planning, Engineering, and IT will be with Engineering to answer any questions about the transfer of the GIS division, the Trade Center, and Recorder's Court.
And I was asked by a member of the Budget Review Committee if it's appropriate to invite somebody here if they have questions, and it absolutely is. It might help, though, if there's specific questions, if you can get those to them ahead of time, they can come prepared to answer them. So if anybody would like a department head to appear, if we'll just let Deputy City Manager Hodge know, and we will try to get them on the agenda. If there are no other questions or comments, we are adjourned.